So we're in the worst of our snow here over the course of the late morning into the early afternoon. The heaviest snow will be coming down through late morning, but the worst wind lasting us into the middle afternoon. The outages continue to compound. They've been going up quickly. We'll look at how many outages in just a minute. We've had blowing and drifting snow that's been covering up roadways rather rapidly as soon as they're cleared out. And this has been an ongoing problem for our crews that have been out there. It's been making travel continued treacherous, dangerous, and truly in southeastern New England, including southeastern Mass to Rhode Island, life-threatening for us because so many things are down. You've got limbs down, wires down. It is a complete disaster zone in portions of southeastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island. That is not exaggeration. That is what we're hearing from our municipality partners who are across southeastern Massachusetts. And so they, of course, are continuing to urge folks not to go out. If you have not lost power yet, I'm going to show you the power outages. I want you to be ready to lose it in eastern New England. If that means that, particularly in southeastern Mass, if you're one of the lucky ones who still has power, you may want to put a little bit of water in the tub if you have a private well, because if you lose power, you may lose the ability to get water, and it could last you for a few days here. The snow's not totally done until we get into the evening in eastern New England. We'll look at the timing here in a second, and the blowing and drifting does continue all the way into the night tonight. Here is the very well-defined storm center just sitting south and east of Nantucket. You can see that swirl in the atmosphere that shows up in all the snow that's been pinwheeling on the north and west side of the storm. This storm, as we heard from Danielle just a few moments ago, now has become not only a bomb, but then some. You look for the barometric pressure to drop on the order of 24 millibars in 24 hours. Millibars is a measure of pressure. Well, it not only did that, but it dropped 41 millibars over the course of the last 24 hours, and that is rather incredible. When you look at the satellite imagery, you can see why a tremendously well-developed storm circulation south of Nantucket making its closest pass to us here in the late morning, and that's why the wind is getting worse as it comes on by. Once it goes by, the wind will shift to blow out of the northwest, but that storm core with an eye-like feature is a bit of a hybrid system. That doesn't mean that it's tropical, but it does mean that it has a warm center to it relative to the rest of the air around it. So pretty remarkable setup with what's going on just off of our New England coastline with this blizzard. Okay, let's continue to roll and show you the power outages here. And right now I can certainly back up the fact that Cape Cod is leading the way. These numbers continue to climb, and quickly. Now, I would guess that we are over 120,000 just in Barnstable County alone, and I would guess we probably have crossed 60,000 in Plymouth County. Bristol County and much of Rhode Island is right there with you as well, hit hard. Notice that Essex County has been on the rise. Much of eastern Massachusetts has been getting hit with the wind and the snow, and even if you don't have as much snow in Essex County, it's still been enough to knock about 5% of folks without power. Notice that 67% of the Cape now without power, which is why I say this will take days in some spots to get back on. I always have to be careful because I don't want to give the impression that everyone is going to take multiple days, because some come on, of course, much faster than others. But you should be in that mindset, particularly if you're in a little bit more rural area. These are current wind gusts. This is not a prediction. This is what's going on right now. We're gusting at 72 miles per hour at Plymouth, 76 at Provincetown, 74 at Chatham, 72 at Nantucket, 61 at Gloucester. Now, keep in mind, notice Worcester to Webster is still gusting over 50 miles per hour. Same thing in eastern Connecticut along 395. So this has been a substantial area that's been covered by significant wind, and this is why we've been looking at what has been so many compounded issues of blowing and drifting in addition to power outages that have been going on. In terms of the wind forecast, we are pretty much at our peak right now. We will likely tickle 80 if we haven't already across some of the Cape Cod National Seashore and the Outer Cape. I think that once we start getting to about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, we begin to see that wind speed come down, but it's still gusting to nearly 70 on the Outer Cape. Even by 4:45 this afternoon, you're gusting over 40 in a lot of eastern New England. We think that 40-mile-an-hour threshold gets crossed probably around 4 or 5 p.m. And the reason that I mention that 40-mile-per-hour threshold in particular is because usually your amount of new damage is going to come down considerably once you've gone below 40 miles an hour. Just about everybody has by 7 or 8 o'clock, although on the Outer Cape, it may take even a little bit longer than that. And it does stay windy through the overnight, worth mentioning, because beyond power outages, it's the issue with blowing and drifting back into what's already been cleared out that will continue all the way into the overnight, and that means these road crews, God bless them, are going to stay at it deep into the night. In central New England, the gusts have been expanding up the Massachusetts and now New Hampshire seacoast. Notice Sanford, Maine, gusting about 45 miles per hour. Not everybody gusting equally. We think that you're probably about where you're going to max out for a lot of central and southern New Hampshire. So if it hasn't been that bad for you yet, it probably isn't going to be. The exception or difference to that would be along the Maine coast. Notice Portland, Maine is going to be gusting upwards of 50 miles an hour during the middle to late afternoon. That would continue up the Maine coast. And again, you haven't had as much snow in central and northern portions of New England, but what you do have will be blowing around. The wind is starting to gust over 40 miles per hour at the coast of Maine now as well, and the expectation is right at the Route 1 corridor and then right along the coastline. You probably do gust over 50, even through mid-coast down east as we head through the late afternoon and early evening hours, and then that continues to move on. Again, you'll get some blowing and drifting, but blowing and drifting of a half a foot of snow at the Maine coastline rather than blowing and drifting of 2 feet or 2 to 3 feet of snow that we have in parts of southeast New England. Visibility is the key component to a blizzard. It is not that you have to have heavy snow falling. It's that you have to have heavy snow either falling or blowing and drifting to the point that it reduces visibility to a quarter mile or less, and that winds are gusting over 35 miles per hour consecutively for 3 hours. If there is a break of 10 or 20 minutes, technically that doesn't meet the scientific definition of a blizzard, but you can see a lot of visibilities down around a quarter to an eighth of a mile. This is your whiteout stuff that's coming down right now. That is the case into southern New Hampshire, and then once you get north of Concord, poof. Laconia's got 10-mile visibility. Lebanon, Springfield, Vermont, 10-mile visibility. And you just get too much into the dry air. You don't get very much snow. I'll show you that in just a second. Temperatures have been dropping. Boston was 27 just an hour ago. We've lost 3 more. Norwood's down 2. We are still a heavy, wet, pasting snow at 32 degrees for the South Shore, Plymouth County, Bristol County beginning to cool a little bit. That's going to change the consistency and make it a little bit lighter. But the damage literally has been done with the heavy wet snow that has been coming down on top of us. The farther north you go, the more into the cold air that you have. And again, that's cold and dry air, which is why really this storm is a no-show across a lot of northern New England. Here's the radar. You're looking at the deeper blue, indicating what are the heavier kind of elements of snow coming down. Obviously, the big focus there has been in southeastern Mass. We found these bands of heavier snow that have been reaching up into the rest of eastern Mass. Although at 495, you're starting to see a break in it. We're seeing a little bit of a heavier band out by Gardner and coming into western Mass along the I-91 corridor, and it gets lighter in between. All those white dots, by the way, this is just a big data dump that happened right before I had come up with this video, and that's why you're seeing everything everywhere. Some of those are gusts to 80 miles an hour or near 80, 75 when you get along the coastline. Some of them are gusts to like 17 miles an hour inland, and a lot of them are snow reports. So if you can excuse the white dots, just understand that that's where the Skywarn Spotter Network has been doing their job and reporting in a lot of information to the weather community so that we can share it with you. We have a great partnership with the Skywarn Network. We thank every member of Skywarn and the ham radio operators who keep all this information flowing in. You don't see a whole lot of reports yet when you get up along the coast of Maine, right? And that's because we're still waiting on the snow to kind of nudge in. This is an analysis of the wind gusts, and certainly you can see the strong wind both north and south of that center that we looked at on satellite. It's even more impressive if I zoom in a little bit more. What I can do is I can actually analyze some of the spots that stand out. 88 mile per hour winds, 86 mile per hour winds. These are gusts. 84 just east of Nantucket, just off the Cape Cod National Seashore, 79 miles an hour. And that's why I say that some of us are most certainly seeing gusts to 80 miles per hour at the immediate exposed coastal locales. And this is going to be the worst period of wind right now. It will stay pretty harsh all the way through about 3 p.m. as we looked at together, and then at least begin to back off a little bit more after that. So, all this wind obviously is having an impact with regard to blowing and drifting, etc. But the other part of this is that we're talking about a wind chill that now is in the single digits. So with that falling temperature in Boston, it feels like 5. And even through southeastern Mass, where it's been that, quote, milder snow at 32, it feels like 15 all the way down to the Cape. So it is very cold out there. So for the crews that are out there, including the bucket trucks of the utilities, can't really get up until we start to see the wind die down. But just hats off to the men and women who are out there doing this work, and our first responders who are out there, because this is a cold storm, even if it doesn't look like that on the thermometer. So that makes a big difference, and it certainly has a big impact on the body. That's even been the case When you get around portions of western Massachusetts, you've had that wind chill factor that's been running about 14 degrees at Springfield. And then in northern New England, we've been into the colder, drier air, right? But at the same time, it certainly has had an impact for us as well. Seas have built now 13 to 16 feet. When you get just offshore, we think we'll go 20 to 25 just off of the coastline. And so that, of course, leads to some of our coastal concerns. The expectation here on what we're doing is minor coastal flooding as we head through the course of our afternoon high tide. We don't think this is going to be a big deal for many, except Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, where we will find moderate coastal flooding again, and that will be a bigger issue for us. The high tide for most folks is in the middle to late afternoon, generally around about 3:50 or so. Again, where the moderate coastal flooding is happening, a little bit bigger deal because some chunks of ice from the frozen bays can get carried onto coastal roadways and need to be cleared. Again, for most, not the case when you get off of the islands. Here's the predicted radar going through the afternoon. Notice that we continue to see a bit of a decrease in the intensity. The heaviest snow band will be found across southeastern Mass, but it does not quit for you. And even farther to the north and west, when is it going to stop is one of the biggest questions we get. And the answer to that is not until about 5 p.m. in parts of central New England, 5 or 6, and in eastern New England, not till probably about 7 to 9, and in southeastern Massachusetts, maybe not till about 10 or 11 by the time all is said and done. You can see it does at least dry out tonight, but remember, you've got the blowing and drifting. Snowfall rates, the deep blues, you can see your 2-inch per hour snow still going at noon. As we head to the afternoon, the white is where you've got half-inch per hour rate. The light blue is inch per hour rate. Inch per hour rates are still across the Metro West, Boston, Revere, running all the way up to Cape Ann through 2 o'clock this afternoon. Then once we get past about 3, those rates start to peel back. And then finally, we make some progress in terms of getting this stuff to kind of wind down a bit. And again, it's not really until this evening that you see it totally tapering. In terms of additional snow, what we do this deep into the game is basically, we're trying to update you with hourly data. So this is based on computer forecast model data, and it's not going to be keeping up as well as it necessarily should, but it's doing okay, which is to say that in that purple area, if you line it up with the legend at the top, that's 8 to 12. I don't think we have another 12 to go in these spots of southeastern Mass. I do think that we have probably another 8 to 12 to go in these spots, though. When you get along the north shore of Mass, you actually are getting a pretty heavy snow band with near zero visibility. So to think about another 8 certainly would make sense for you. And then the farther north and west you go, I would do the exact same thing. I would take the lower end of the range on a lot of this. Why do we shift into this? Because look, in terms of your planning, and particularly for a lot of the crews that are out there, it does become an idea of, aside from the blowing and drifting, how much more do we have to get through? So we will take stock of the totals by the time all is said and done, but I can certainly tell you in full disclosure that when you get around someplace like Charlestown or Boscawen, you're ending up with less than we initially had thought. We cut back amounts last evening, but it was, going into this, we thought the moisture would spread farther north. Look at the tremendously sharp cutoff that's going to be happening, right? When you get around Laconia, basically you get missed out of this one entirely. Lake Winnipesaukee essentially missed. Snowmobile country essentially missed. But you've got another chance. Look at this on Wednesday. Folks have been a little bit worried about this. I wouldn't worry about this significantly. I think it's probably a coating to an inch event with a mixture in southern New England. Northern New England may get a couple to a few inches out of this on Wednesday because you get a little bit colder air. But there's a couple of things that I always say when you get behind these big, big storms, which is that let the guidance get a really good handle on, remember, this storm we knew was going to be a bomb. We knew it was going to be more than that, but it's gone even beyond what was expected. That's going to reconfigure the jet stream to some extent. So we really shouldn't get too up in arms one way or the other. Oh, it's going to miss. Oh, it's going to hit for later in the week. We know that the Wednesday one is not a real big deal with mixed showers and some snow that'll be fairly light. But the Thursday night time frame with that one, let's see what shakes out with that. Let's let the guidance get a pretty good handle on what's happening with this storm going by. And you say, as a meteorologist, can you figure it out without that guidance? And the answer is no. As a meteorologist, it's something that even for us, we have to wait and see just how big this storm has gotten and just how it's affected the overall flow. So that's how things look in terms of what's coming up over the course of the next couple of days. You've got the rundown now also in terms of what I think is coming up over the course of the next several hours. Danielle and I are going to stay on top of this. We will continue to provide updates either via live stream or just via our video updates. Best way to get those updates is always via our app, the 1 Degree Outside weather app. You find that in the App Store and Google Play. Do a search for the number 1 Degree Outside, and you'll be able to find it there. It is free. It is 5 stars. Spread the word. Let folks all across, not only New England, it'll work actually across the world, but it's especially good anywhere in the nation. I think you'll find good performance out of that app. And the big thing for us is it's our way to communicate with you. So this morning, when we got word from our municipal partners that things were really a disaster across southeastern Mass, right away we issued a push notification to that targeted area, letting folks know just how bad it was so they wouldn't go out there. So again, we'll continue to keep you posted, certainly here. We're going to go ahead and kind of switch off of the live stream so we can keep updating some of our private forecast clients that we have as well. We want to make sure we take good care of them, although we know that you, our partners, have been watching this live stream, and we hope this has been helpful for you too in some of your planning about what's coming up and where things are headed next. So with that, we're going to continue and get back to our recorded videos on our stream. For those who've been watching on social media, continue to stay connected with us, and we will keep you posted. Send us your pictures and reports. It helps us tell the story. Use the Send to Us tab on our app. That goes not only right to us, but it does go directly to the Skywarn Spotter Network, and that also gets relayed to the National Weather Service. So by sharing that with us in the Send to Us tab, you are sharing it with all of our partners and with the meteorological community at large. Stay safe. Don't underestimate this one. I know that the snow is kind of coming in fits and starts in some areas away from the coast, but this has been a real doozy for you. So take it easy. We will keep you posted. Thank you so much for your support and for watching 1 Degree Outside.